Welcome everyone to AbbeyCast, another episode here. We're grateful that you're tuning in. Today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Father Andrew D. Ciferni and Norbertine here at Daylesford Abbey. Some of you may know him from a number of other venues. If you've ever ventured out to the great state of Wisconsin, particularly the city of DePere, and have gone to St. Norbert Abbey there or the college, St. Norbert College, you may know him as the chair of the Board of Trustees of St. Norbert College, also the former director of the Center of Norbertine Studies there at the college, serving here at the Abbey as the director of Liturgy, and then internationally operating in a few capacities, the Norbertine International Commissions for Liturgy, Spirituality, and Education.
Right. Those are three committees, not one big, yeah.
Yeah, even more the busy, right? Yeah.
Gets me to Europe.
It's always good to have an excuse to travel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for joining me today here on the podcast. Very grateful that you're giving of your time, especially that considering that you're on sabbatical right now. So your presence at the Abbey here is not official, maybe, but in coming back for some liturgical duties, we're grateful that you made time for the podcast. So how's the sabbatical been going so far?
The sabbatical has not been going in any way that I was planning. Let me just say...
that's a sabbatical in 2020 for our listeners, we'll clarify.
Yes, it began July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. I had permission for that sabbatical, which had been put off because of caring for my mother, who was in a nursing home. But she died just about a year ago, August 23rd. And I had said to Abbot Dominic when I came back from the 5 years I had at St. Norbert College that I was ready for sabbatical. Mm-hmm. So he was gracious enough to allow, soon after she died, I asked for that. Mm-hmm. My plan was to base myself in New Mexico to our abbey outside Albuquerque, to liturgy, go to the desert. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I had some writing projects, especially I wanted to do a kind of history of our family for my nieces and nephews. I have ideas of writing about Norbertine spirituality, and I also wanted to do somewhat of a memoir. I've had a very, very blessed life, and when Abbot Neitzel sent me to Rome in 1965, I was 23 years old. I'm not a priest yet, in a long shot, and so I was in Rome for the last session of the Vatican Council. Which was really an exciting event in a very exciting time.
I bet.
A time quite different from now in the church. And
how so would you say?
Well, the excitement about theology. So I was a frater, a seminarian at St. Norbert Abbey. I was there for 4 years in DePere, Wisconsin, as many of us were. And for the first 3 years, I was in the college. The fourth year, I was in my first year of theology. Okay. So I was sent to Rome after that. And the excitement about the future of the church that was coming out of the council, and really to see the move for American theologians to move from resourcing theology from Europe to doing their own fantastic work in scripture and in theology and in liturgy. It was really an exciting time. That is not where we are right now. I mean, there was this tension between conservatives and progressives, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
Liberal, etc.
Right.
But nothing like there is today. Nothing like the pushback, the weaponizing of theology and liturgy or COVID.
Right.
So it was, in fact, this may sound quite unbelievable. In my first year of theology, my last year of study at St. Norbert Abbey, I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if there will be anything left to do, after I'm ordained. Grant, I was 22,
Right.
but I thought, all the churches will unite, and of course it was the folk music era.
Oh, okay. All right.
Let there be peace.
Lots of kumbaya.
The kumbaya, yeah. So that we're definitely not there now. But that was more than 50 years. So going back to where we started, one of my hopes was to do some writing about my let's see, how is it? 52 years as a priest, 60 some as a Norbertine, and also to do some writing about the rule of Augustine and contemporary life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
great.
So whether this will get done is another question, but yeah.
That seems to be the one of the persistent themes of this year, 2020 so far. It was like whether that will get done, we don't know.
Right. So the sabbatical, that's what was my plan, and I had permission for the sabbatical before I became the chair of the board of St. Norbert College, and I really see that as providential because it gives me freedom to do the work and have the time to do the work as chair, which would have been very difficult if I was here doing what I normally do. Now, the idea of being in New Mexico is that's very much up in the air. I'm dealing with some medical issues which compromise me, and how am I going to get there?
Sure.
Do I fly there? Do I drive there? So right now, God has provided the Longport, New Jersey seaside house of my brother.
Beautiful.
And so I'm there, and it's not a great place to work, it's it gives me some space.
Yeah, and it's the beach in the summertime. So
the beach in the summertime, yeah.
I don't think you can ask
my
for much more.
sister-in-law is a fantastic cook.
There you go. You're all set then.
So, right. So we'll see where this is going. I should be going to a board meeting, an in-person board meeting, at the beginning of October in Wisconsin. Whether so far every in-person thing we've planned has become a Zoom meeting.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah, and Wisconsin's a state that I guess is in a little different position than Pennsylvania per se, and maybe where they're at with reopening.
Well, it opened up very early.
Yeah.
And so from your wife's family.
Of course.
We must have our beer. We must have it in common.
All right, yeah.
So, I keep watching it, and it did spike, but it's not appearing as one of the, at least today, one of the more perilous states to be.
That's good. And you know what they say, that if you're going to have your beer, you should drink Wisconsin-bly.
That's right. No, I hadn't heard that.
I think it's a T-shirt I saw at General Mitchell Airport out there in Milwaukee. But yeah. So how about how you've been filling your time during the sabbatical with theological stuff? Have you been, or has it just been like a nice little break?
Well, because it began on July 1st, and I would say the biggest block of time has been the work as the chair of the board. Because
you have time for it now.
Yes, because our May meeting became a virtual meeting, and usually in our meetings we have a full day of committee meetings, finance, admissions, ministry and spirituality, advancement, and those all go for 2 hours apiece, from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. Every board member is on 4 of those committees. The chair of the board is on every committee, which in a way is an advantage, because the chair can just pop in but because we made that a virtual meeting in May, we had no committee meetings. So we planned to do full committee meetings on Zoom in the middle of July. So very early on in my sabbatical, I was spending at least 2.5 hours every day on Zoom, and then another Zoom to prepare the next one. And so that's really been a very big block of my time.
Yeah, academia certainly in a everyone, but academia particularly is an interesting situation right now.
Right.
Yeah. And imagine you're having your hands full.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier the pre-Vatican II spirit that you were really excited by and was bubbling up. Where did you find yourself within all that? You said you weren't even a priest at the time when you went to Rome?
No.
Okay.
No, I was. I went to Rome in 19...
But you were along that process within your discernment, right?
Oh yes, I was already solemn professed.
Okay.
So I was 23, and I was ordained at the age of 26.
Okay.
So it's an interesting question right now because I'm trying to work my way through 50 years of files of courses I've taught, talks I've given, and I came across the papers I did for John Dominic Crossan. I don't know how many people watching this will know who he is. At the time, he was a Servite priest and a really up-and-coming scripture scholar. Well, he has now written, 10 books. He's connected with the Jesus Seminar. You know, what did Jesus really say? What did the community add to that? One of the most prominent scripture scholars in the United States. And he would come from Chicago every Friday. And I had him for the introduction to the Old Testament. And I found the papers that I wrote for him.
Wow.
Which really, they did something to my head because I realized that's when I started to come into contact with Jung and Teilhard. And actually, I think I was a better writer then than I am now. I mean, these papers are so, well, because they had to be limited, etc.
Right.
And so that is, that was really a new beginning. Because I was raised in a very traditional Italo-American family, and I was very much drawn to the order because of the common prayer of the liturgy.
Okay.
So that had already, from the novitiate, begun to change me. And then college was a real opening of my mind. St. Norbert College was and is a really outstanding liberal arts college. And but that experience of the first year of theology, because we had a great homiletics professor, canon law, ecclesiology, and it was out of that, I think, that somebody recommended to Abbot Neitzel that they send me to study in Europe. So that was really a great beginning of a trajectory that I've kept on. I tend to be, even though liturgy has been the focus of my academic work and workshops, I've done a lot on the history of the order, etc. But I'm a generalist.
Okay.
I read all over. My interest in art and architecture, and so for years I, in a way, beat myself up about that because I know I have the capacity to be what I call a German footnote academician. I don't have the personality for it.
Right.
But it has worked very well for me in making connections from, somebody said once, I was saying to a student, that I was comparing myself to a professor at Catholic University, a very good liturgy professor. And he said, yes, that's true. He said, but, who else has cookbooks in their footnotes? And so yeah.
You're you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me.
And so a generalist was the term you used.
Right.
And obviously we need specialists, right, to focus in on the nuances of things, topics. But I think it's very helpful to have that more universal perspective, which you only get by kind of reading and looking at different things from all over.
Yeah. There was an instrument that, I don't know if we're still using it at the college. We use it with incoming first-year students. It's called Strength Quest. It's one of these, and assessments. It's done by the Gallup people.
Okay.
Right? And so I took it. And there are 34 different aspects of, characters. They give you the first five free.
Like you're, okay.
And the very first one for me is connectedness.
Ah.
I make connections.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a large part of creativity.
I think so too.
Is that it's not necessarily you're doing something completely new.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting together things that people otherwise might not have thought of.
Right. That's what they're even finding now within like neuroscience and brain connectivity.
Right.
And even if you want to go to the quantum world, right? It's all about interconnectedness. Right. Yeah.
I do it with people.
Mm-hmm.
I do it with ideas. I do it when I teach, when I preach.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, and it comes from all of these resources of reading and film and, friendships. And
that's a gift to be able to have that sort of scope and synthesize it within.
It is.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's a gift. I discovered it, that it was in me. Not that I didn't set out to do a program and learning how to make connections.
So also probably a good plug for vocations in that too. It's like, you follow that road that you think is yours to take, that God has laid out, and you never know what becomes of that, what God makes with that, right? Yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful thing for sure. So, and being a liturgy guy now, was that what you at 22, 23, would you say, when you were around?
Yes.
Were you focused on liturgy then?
This is, of course, when we look back at our lives. I remember in 1952, I was 10 years old. I devoured everything I could find on the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. Not what every kid in the block was doing, right? And how I loved serving as an altar boy, especially for the big days in Holy Week, etc. So there's something was in me. I also realize that I come from a family that, for example, that my sense of liturgical year is very, very strongly formed by the way we ate.
Okay.
So my brothers and I have been together the last few weeks, and we've done a lot of talking about this. So where there was this little Italian Christmas pastry that was made only, the way it was made came only from the part of Italy that my paternal grandfather came from, and we only had it at Christmas. There was Easter bread only at Easter, and this food made it fit in with the liturgy and the time of the year. So I think that was planted very early in me. And I know it was one of the things that attracted me to the Norbertines. Okay. I in the summers I used to work as a houseboy in the kitchen, and so I got a sort of inside look, and I was very drawn to the liturgical life of the order. So in those days, I joined in 1959. When you were going through college, we were doing a lot of education, the Norbertines. A college, college and 2 high schools in Wisconsin, Archmere Prep in Delaware, Southeast Catholic High School in Philadelphia. So it was presumed. If you wanted to be a missionary in Africa, the Norbertines were not the ones to join the United States. So everyone had to have a philosophy major, but also another major, or at least a minor, in some other area to teach. And you were often told what that was going to be, So, but
then there was that being told what you were going to study based on an assessment of your character, or more of a need-based thing?
The further back you go, the more it was based on
the need of the order. Yeah. Gotcha. All right.
It's tough that you don't like chemistry. You're going to teach chemistry. And so by the time I was in college, it was beginning to change a little. I mean, you could, people were expressing, what they thought they would like to do. And I made it very clear I would like to do a master's in liturgy at Notre Dame when I finished college, and teach high school in South Philadelphia. But I got really engaged in the local liturgical renewal. when I was in college, I did my first liturgy workshop. It was about the season of Advent. So the plan was that we were in those days, every abbey had its own theologate, and that's why the then Father Neitzel, later Abbot Neitzel, was sending people away to study. And so he said, we'd like you to go to Rome. No, he said, we'd like you to go to Europe and do a license in theology. The license is between a master's and a doctorate in the European system. Then come back and teach for a year or two, and then go back and do your doctorate in liturgy. Well, I thought, oh my God, what more could my sweet Jesus do? So I did that, and being in Rome in those days, I mean, every other day there was some rite that had been renewed. Adult baptism, infant baptism, reconciliation. So to be in the middle of that was really exciting. So when I came back, I only taught for a year, and then I went to do my doctorate at Notre Dame. And these rites were being implemented so fast and furious that graduate students were being called on to go to Peoria and places like that. And it was a very exciting time. When I look back on it and the role I had in it, and why many people think that liturgical renewal failed. There are a lot of reasons for that. Probably the variables, there are more variables than we can count. So first of all, it all happened, in this very, what do we name that? As I say, folk culture, Woodstock, etc.
Summer of Love, that whole,
So a lot of people felt, well, we could just do anything we want. And so you get, the
very loosey-goosey,
what we call the kumbaya liturgical music, etc. And I think that what did not get communicated, and I don't know if it, in that atmosphere, if it could have been communicated outside of abbeys, but even in abbeys, it was some abbeys, at least in our abbeys, in the United States, it was hard. That what the follow-up of the council created was I believe, a very, very strong base for liturgical renewal through the renewal of the rites. But the rites were not celebrated in the way the best of the old rites were celebrated. Now, people who are nostalgic about the old times, believe me, Sunday High Mass in a lot of parishes was bad music, poorly celebrated, etc. Now there were always places that stood out, but that got lost. The drive towards intelligibility, and if we can understand this now, that the liturgy became very wordy, and people felt they should add even more, and so that's one element that didn't click. At this point, I think the other thing I realize is that both in regard to liturgy and the life of the church, we never went deep enough in spirituality. We did not and still do not have a spirituality that is deep enough to ground that.
How so?
Well, that your hearing of the word, for example, is so dependent on hearing the word outside the hour that you're in church on Sunday. So even if that is only that you look at the readings for Sunday in advance and pray over them, so that you've got a depth of reception. Now, that should also be happening by the man who's preparing the homily.
Right.
What is the depth of his reading of the scripture? What is the depth and breadth of his reading of the culture of theology? So I think that those elements have worked together, and also that just as we were in the folklore, I keep on missing a word for that era.
Folk, like
well, the
I know what you mean.
Kumbaya era. Now we are in this as I said before, or you have said this, weaponized conversations about COVID and politics, and where people don't find it possible to speak to one another, and so the fact that the promise of Vatican II has not been fulfilled is read as the failure of Vatican II.
I see.
I don't think it's the failure of Vatican II. I think it's the failure to realize what is there,
right,
and to come back at it. What people are noticing is very interesting about Pope Francis. He is the most Vatican II Pope since the Vatican Council, precisely because he wasn't in the council, and so didn't have to become part of the tensions that were in the council.
Yeah.
Tensions that are in every one of the documents. The way the documents happened, that they got such high approval, is because they're so highly compromised. Now, I don't see, it probably would not have been possible to do anything else but compromise. But, and that all came to a head around the last document, the Church in the Modern World. So when we see, for example, what I would say is somewhat of a pullback by Pope Benedict. Pope Benedict felt that that the document was too optimistic.
Okay.
He would,
Okay.
Is that answering your question?
Yeah.
I'm rambling, but
No, it's all good. And
All right, good.
within that, it was like I stopped you. It's like, what did you mean by that? Because that's something that really hadn't occurred to me now. Is that I guess everyone has their own individual spirituality, right? But I guess that institutions do take on a collective spirituality too, and that's not something I had really considered consciously until you mention it.
Yeah, what you just said, everybody is his own individual spirituality. Was that what you said, or you just said something but you used the word individual?
Or personal, maybe.
All right.
Well,
I don't like to use personal.
Okay.
Because when people talk about private prayer, I would rather, or individual prayer, I would rather use the word personal, which I see
personal. Your own.
It's very positive.
Yeah, your own personal spirituality.
But what our culture, especially American culture, has become very, very marked by is freedom and individuality. I want the maximum amount of freedom to do what I want to do. So you've got right down the street from you these guys who are keeping the gym open.
Oh, yeah.
They're making national news, all right? Despite the rules of their rules, they are breaking rules that are for the common good. St. Augustine, I think the most important sentence in the rule of St. Augustine, which we try to follow, is, you are making progress when you put the good of the community before your own individual good. That's a paraphrase, but that is so lacking in the culture.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when there's so much influence from so many different vectors coming in at people. And having that internal life is very critical right now. I think being able to stay grounded and centered and focused on what's most important to you and your community. Yeah,
when I left the Washington Theological Union, I taught seminarians and lay ministers in Washington for 10 years. I dropped out of the academic scene for liturgy. And I still read liturgy, especially really good articles. But much, much more of my reading is in spirituality, either biblical spirituality or, we've talked about Teilhard. Yeah, it's because and the work I do one-on-one with students is very much with Lectio Divina, teaching them centering prayer, because that base, I think, is critical for this quote that's always being said, again, a paraphrase of Karl Rahner, in the future, people will either be mystics or there will be nothing at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, you're going to have the camp that wants to go back to tradition and wants to go back to what's familiar and comfortable, right? You're going to have the camp that wants to be progressive and update things, and you're going to have the camp that just is, right? That just lives it, and no matter the situation, it is a sacred moment and an opportunity to connect. So. That's a good point. Something that I find myself coming back to as a reminder theologically, right? And it's more importantly spiritually, I think.
It's the other really big influence on me as a channel to others is Richard Rohr on the whole non-dualistic thinking, etc. And that's got one of my poster boys is Meister Eckhart.
Okay.
And that everything is one. Everything is one. And so even when I'm having a difficult time with one politician or another, I have to say, we are one.
Right.
The same spirit has taken flesh in you as in me.
Right. Yeah. And to wish bad upon that person or to feel anger upon that person.
I pray for their early retirement.
It's like, righteous anger is a thing for sure. We have Jesus flipping tables in the temple. And it's like, if I'm just going to stay in that place all the time, it's like I need to sublimate that into prayer or into some sort of positive action in the world, right? And maybe not just a Facebook post is sufficient nowadays. So, wow.
Sure.
Well, looking forward, where do you see liturgy going? What changes? Let me preface this by this time has been a totally unexpected curveball. And, you being the director of liturgy here had to make a lot of quick changes and work with the community here. And but where do you see these changes taking us in the future?
Well, during this COVID period, about a month ago, CNN did a global town hall, 2-hour presentation, interviews, etc., on the future of education, the effects that, like for your own children, of not being able to be in an environment where their friendships have been broken, etc. But they worked up to higher education, and this marketing professor from NYU, his last name is Galloway. This guy, he started. And he did not stop from the moment he opened his mouth. He was so fascinating. In fact, when he finished, Anderson Cooper said, "That's the most fascinating 5 minutes I've had in a long time." But one of his main points, he kept on talking about the death march. And he was talking about colleges and universities. And he said, the COVID is not the cause, will not be the cause of the closing of colleges and universities. It will be the accelerator.
Sure. Of a lot of industries, I'd imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. Not just of higher education, but also of the church.
Yeah.
So what has COVID done is we have already been on a decline in attendance, engagement, in what I would say was the excitement of being engaged in the church 50 years ago. Well, now we have said for marching 6 months, you don't have to be in church, and you don't have to receive communion, and you can be in your pajamas with coffee and bagels and watch mass, and you don't even have to do it at the time it's on. So I think that's going to have an effect on attendance and engagement. That's one thing. How's it going to affect the liturgy? The elements of ritual renewal that were like, revelations, at least in America, on the scene. Communion under both forms, the sign of peace, lusty singing, we are definitely not going back to the old normal. And we don't know what the new normal is going to be.
It seems as if the collective we, were so unprepared for this that
Absolutely.
I don't. It might be like a hope of mine, but I would like to think that in that unpreparedness, some of our response has maybe been not the most appropriate. I'm not criticizing any response. I'm just saying that maybe as we go forward, as we continue to do science, as science continues to reveal itself, it reveals itself on its own time. We can't force that, right? Maybe we will learn more, and maybe we will see that, yes, we reacted this way to this situation, and that was the best we could have done in the time, but going forward, maybe there are more things we can say or whatever. But yeah, that is a really interesting interplay there between going forward yet going back at the same time because of this great shutdown. It's been a lot, and that's been you just put me in a place kind of where you started with the excitement up until now, and then you see this regression almost. It's like because I have young kids, as you know, and that's something my wife, having a background in theology as well, that's dinner time conversation for us, right? It's like and like baptism and things like that. That's some heavy stuff there. You just left me with, but
or a simple thing like, I'm not the first person to raise this. So here we are in situations of illness that are crying out, for the rites of sacraments of healing. Yeah. And the only people that can do that are priests. Yeah. Well, really? I mean, can we say in this situation that deacons can be called upon to do this? It's my sister-in-law is a doctor and nurse practitioner, and she wrote to me and said, what can I do for these people who are dying alone? And I sent her all the texts from the commending the dying and the prayer at the moment of death, etc. And she posted them for the nurses. That we have to be thinking outside the box.
And I would imagine in that, obviously these limitations become very constricting, right? But I would also imagine that within this triage we're trying to do right now as a culture, there's a very important place of prominence for the spiritual leader, for the theologian, for the church to be a voice of care in that moment. I was told by someone who had done hospital chaplaincy years ago that one of the dynamics that they liked most about being a hospital chaplain was that when they were assigned to the ER or any sort of triage unit, they, as that spiritual figure within the group, were seen to be just as important as one of the doctors, because that person might be needing rites or something like that.
Yeah.
So, or their spiritual lineage or heritage or current religious affiliation may dictate how their care plays out. So I thought that was a very interesting point.
The other, of course, we haven't talked at all about, racism and where's that going to enter in?
Yeah.
How, will any bishop or all the bishops or some of the bishops be called upon to be the potential John Lewis for the Catholic Church or the Catholic Church to the wider culture? That is a really, we're from my work as the chair of the Board of Trustees, what is happening, or now for the first time in my life I read the business section of the New York Times because I have to see if it's saying anything about higher education. If you're not getting on board on diversity, quality, inclusion, you might as well write yourself off the map.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there are so many. I think you gave a homily, and the title of it was "Secrets Revealed." There are so many secrets, we could call them, or just maybe things that got pushed down into our unconscious, right? As a society, as a collective, that are now bubbling back up, and usually when something comes up from when something comes up from your unconscious, it's usually going to knock you upside the head.
That's right.
Aren't you paying attention to me? There is a dynamic or a feeling right now to a dynamic of like some dark night of the soul or something like that. But like Jung says, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. So these are clearly societal issues, systemic issues that need working through and leave us a lot to think about, a lot of work to be done. I was talking with my neighbor one day who his kids were all grown and had families of their own, and grass is green, sky is blue type conversation, state of the world. And I go, we got a lot of work to do. And he goes, no, you have a lot of work to do. He goes, I'm retired.
I know I've said this to someone recently. I don't know if it was you. I find it such a daunting challenge to bring a child into the world at this point in history. I mean, all marriage is a risk, but having children is a huge risk at any point in history. Mm-hmm. But it's where we headed.
I like to think that these kids choose us, and they have their reason for coming into this life on this earth right now. And
yes, that's a very nice way to put it.
I've got to keep my focus on the positive with the kids.
It's interesting because we're working on this report on the mission of the college, and I want to preface it. We're responding to a report, and I want to preface it by saying, and again, I'm not the first person that had this idea. It's not so much that the college or the Abbey or some Catholic institution has a mission. The mission has us. We are the instrument of the mission.
Right.
Because all the missions, again, moving beyond this dualism, is headed for the one. It's all headed for the one.
This time has had me really thinking of like we are this cosmic body of Christ. There is a tendency to think that like the mission defines what we're doing here, or is what we're doing here. The political leaders are the ones that see us through this hard time and out of the woods and into clear pastures, and it's like, no, like we this is us. This is a group project here.
Again, there if individuals are not doing it. Now again, it's not the role. The individual thing is that we have enough individuals that we reach a critical mass. Now, there are different ways of reaching critical mass.
That's right.
And one of them is George Floyd. That's not the way we want to do a critical mass. We want to do a critical mass by going deeper. And there was this book years ago. It's at least 20, 25 years ago. It was 10 projections about the future. And the only one I remember was high tech, high touch. That in other words, that systems are looking for equilibrium. The example was that medicine had become so technical, and it is. But at the same time, we've moved the father into the birthing room. We've got music, and it's that birth has not become has become less violent than it was. So and this whole thing of placing the child in the mother's belly. So the high tech is all.
And that's still not even the norm, unfortunately. That's like if you go to the right birthing facility in the right hospital and you had the right plan ahead of time. So that was a whole schooling that I got.
so there was this.
But no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
There's this technology and there's this weaponizing, but there's also the interest in spirituality is really you could. We're not getting the full impact of it here because of COVID, but I think that the kind of things you're doing are saying, all right, we can't fill the building, but we can get the word out, and there's an interest. There's a thirst for that.
Yeah, I think that technology is in itself spiritual. It's all about connectivity, right? So, with the same devotion that your community prays the office, right? people swipe open and check their email or check their Twitter updates or something, and it's like, what are you searching for in that? It's a tool for that connectivity, but it's not the end in that. What you're searching for is particularly going to be found there, right?
Right.
So it's instinctual for us to turn to that, or the screen or whatever it may be,
right,
for that connectivity, but we ultimately need to provide that content there that people connect to.
Right.
And that
we have to provide the content, because I've been living in the midst of this lately, not here, but we have to provide the content that leads people to a disciplined use of social media.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is going to evolve, that the phone is going to become part of our body. People are.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with a gentleman by the name of Elon Musk, but he has a product called the Neuralink, which he says, I think the last I heard, by the end of the year, he hopes to upload into a human brain. There's all that to look forward to. But that raises all sorts of questions that, we could do a whole nother podcast about, with like AI and things like that.
Yeah.
And, the automation of our culture, and what that does for jobs and social justice issues, right?
Oh.
We could go down so many roads with that.
Absolutely.
It is fascinating, but going forward now, like what interests you theologically? Is there any writers that really catch you, or any topics? And you've touched on a number of things that you read.
Well, I
maybe what you're reading now. If
I just finished.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished The Greatest Prayer by John Dominic Crossan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very interesting how that happened, because these papers I found that I had done for him, I sent to one of our students at the college, who was a very bright theology major.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, I'm reading The Greatest Prayer by John Dominic Crossan.
There you go.
Which is a wonderful commentary on the Lord's Prayer. And I just finished that, and I just received in the mail, I started it this morning, Gerhard Lowfink, and he has done, he's a German priest, and again, a biblical scholar.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I've read by him is just a couple of years ago. It's either is that all that there is, or is this all there is? And it's about death.
Okay.
And then I read his book on the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, and this is on about different ways of praying. And so I'm trying to think what else. American Teilhard.
That's right.
Yeah, the whole reception of Teilhard, because that, again, when you're 78 years old and you're reading a book like that, I was there. You're reading that book, and your reading that book is different than my reading that book. Sure. Because I recognize these names. I remember when the note went up on the bulletin board, not that seminarians should not be reading Teilhard, and we were all reading Teilhard.
Uh-huh.
I was putting it into papers that I was getting an A on. So, yeah. So, a lot of my reading is like of journals like Commonweal, and like I go up into the library and browse. And, So.
Well, I'm glad you have the sabbatical time now to yourself.
I am too.
Yeah. As we started with listing your many titles that you've held and still hold, you're a very busy man, and I've in starting to work here at Daylesford Abbey, I've had people come to me and go, "Oh, do you know Father Ciferni or Father Andrew?" And yeah, of course I know. It's like, oh, he probably won't remember me, but when I was in the novitiate at 20 years old or whatever, he taught me a course, and
This would happen with my mother. My mother would say, "Oh, I met somebody and they know you." But I said, "Mom, somebody knows me, maybe because they sat in an audience of 300 people." But I have incredibly good friends, and in fact, one of the things that I've enjoyed most in life, this happened with a celebration for my 50th anniversary of ordination. It was a small, wasn't something I didn't want to do. I didn't do anything big myself. Father Maurice and I were classmates. we invited our families for Sunday Mass, and we had brunch. Beep. No invitations, no rentals. But there was a friend who had this very nice evening, and I remember they were on a lower patio, and I had been there. I went inside and I came out, and I looked at it, and I thought, this is such a familiar occurrence in my life. So here are people that are there from different places in my life. I could have left that party, and it would have been. But I find that my friends from different venues just connect.
That's awesome.
And it's one of the most wonderful blessings of my life.
It is.
Yeah.
That is special when you have friends from all over the world in different places and they get together.
And they'll say later, oh, how is Dominique Marie doing in France? And how is Vitus doing in Austria?
That's cool.
Yeah. Or my students, occasionally I come in contact with my family, which blows their mind. Blows their mind, because it's like, you came from that? I don't mean it as that. I mean, it's
right.
It's like they're images of all the Italian movies you see. Talking like they're from New York or whatever.
Yeah.
And then but my brother will say to me, how's Ethan and Ben doing? So it's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time today to sit down and chat.
Welcome.
Like I said,
we haven't covered 900th, but we can do that maybe.
No, well, yeah. Well, I mean,
No, let's not start.
No. Okay, we'll save that for a different one.
All right. Good.
You're still going to be around in the area.
This is the challenge now with my sabbatical is where to do it in a place that I can do it, which is not staying in the Abbey. I can stay at the shore until at least October, and I'm just watching, the travel piece, because we do have a board meeting in Wisconsin in October, if that's a real meeting, and then I would hope to get to New Mexico after that.
I hope you can too. I know you've been looking forward to that, and a retreat in the desert it's more than a retreat.
It's life in the desert.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful community.
I've never been to New Mexico, but I've just heard it's beautiful. I've been to southwestern Colorado and Arizona and Nevada, but never New Mexico.
Well, if we can make enough money, let me get my word in. If we can make enough money, then we should send you there, to do some podcasts. And
I think that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Good.
Well, who knows where this podcast will end up? Who knows how it will evolve? But grateful you could be a part of it today.
Yeah. So. And it's great having an interlocutor who, really, I don't have to do a lot of explaining. So when I say Tara, you don't say, "Is he a French chef?"
Well, thank you, Father Andrew, for joining us today. Just a reminder to all our listeners at home and those that might be watching on YouTube, on Facebook, this is a presentation of the Springhouse Media Ministry, which you make possible by your support financially, so we are incredibly grateful for that. If you wish to make a donation, you can head on over to daylesford.org/springhouse-media/support. And through PayPal, you're able to make a donation on there. We have programs that are ongoing series like Rock the Word 153 with Father John Zagarella, Art and Artist at the Abbey with the one and only Father Andrew Ciferni. The AbbeyCast podcast, which you're tuning into now, is, of course, a recurring feature we have here. And we also have coming up this fall, a little later this fall, October and November, a virtual retreat given by Father Joe Serrano called Meditative Mondays, which will be done over the course of 8 Mondays from October to November. So we keep churning content out here at Daylesford. We hope that it's relevant to you and your spiritual journey, and we encourage you to share that with those in your life that you think it may resonate with as well. If you happen to be feeling as if the Lord is calling you toward a religious vocation, by all means, continue to ask the Lord what that call means and where it's taking you. So if you'd like to explore that here through Daylesford Abbey, daylesford.org/vocations is where you would navigate to begin to check out the Abbey and the website here, the Norbertine community. You can also send an email to vocations@daylesford.org. The Norbertines are just an incredibly hospitable group of guys. I wouldn't say that I would say that whether or not I had a Norbertine sitting here with me. I've just had great experience and feeling welcome here with them, and I see that they extend that hospitality to all those that enter the Abbey here. So I encourage you to follow up with the Abbey if you feel as if you're being called in that direction, or if you're seeking a private retreat, whether you are of a religious profession or you're a lay person seeking to make a retreat grow a little bit closer in your relationship with the Lord. You can reach out to me here at the Spirituality Center, 610-601-8702. That's 610-601-8702. We'll direct you to the Spirituality and Retreat Center here at the Abbey, where we are offering private retreats. We have plenty of room to keep you safely distant from those people that may also be here on private retreat. Over 80 acres of really beautiful Chester County countryside, and a great prayerful environment. So feel free to reach out, check out our website for a virtual tour on there. And just remember that the Springhouse is made possible, again, through your support. So whether you share this or whether you support us financially or even just hold us in prayer, we are incredibly grateful. So on behalf of all of us here at Daylesford Abbey, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Content from the Springhouse is available free of charge. If you find this ministry is of service to you, we hope that you will support us in providing this content in an ongoing manner. We consider this a pay-it-forward endeavor. Not only would your donation help us to cover the expenses of producing its content, you would make it possible for us to offer it to others as well. As long as we are able, by your generosity, we will continue to produce content which we believe will serve the church. We hope that you might become a partner in this ministry. Please click the link in the description below this video to make a donation.